You've reached Lena. Please leave a message. Beep. Lena. I froze, nearly dropping my phone when I heard Rick's slurred speech. Why was my soon-to-be ex-husband calling me at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday? I screwed up real bad, Lena. I need you to know something. He rambled on drunkenly. I looked over at my 13-year-old daughter Zoe sitting next to me on my parents' couch. We were halfway through our movie night sleepover when he called. Who is it, Mom? Zoe asked, pausing the movie. It's your dad, sweetie. I need to take this outside for a minute. Stay here, I said, attempting to keep my voice even. I stepped out onto the front porch and took a deep breath. What do you want, Rick? I asked sharply. He paused before answering bluntly. Kara's pregnant. I staggered back against the porch railing like I'd been slapped. Kara, the woman he left me for 6 months ago, was pregnant with his child. My ears rang as the revelation sank in. I had my suspicions about his relationship, but it was still a staggering betrayal. As I struggled to process this news, Zoe opened the front door. Mom, is everything okay? She started before seeing the pained look on my face. I quickly composed myself. Everything's fine, sweetie. Your dad had some news he needed to share, I said vaguely, attempting to shield her. Sensing my despair, Zoe wrapped her arms around me comfortingly for a few moments, until I gathered the strength to head back inside. I took a deep breath and asked coldly, I assume Kara knows you're married with a child then? Rick hesitated. No, I haven't told her everything yet, but I will, he added defensively. I sighed disgustedly. Even now he was continuing his web of lies. Rick rambled at me desperately for a few more minutes before I cut him off sharply. Enjoy your new life then, I said scathingly before hanging up. When I returned inside, Zoe was sitting on the couch with a concerned look on her kind face. At only 13, she had maturity beyond her years. I sat down and pulled her close. As she rested her head on my shoulder comfortingly, I knew I had to tell her. Sweetie, your dad called to tell me. Kara is going to have a baby, I revealed gently. Zoe stiffened next to me, processing what I just shared. I know this is painful news, honey, but I promise, no matter what, we'll get through this together, I said, holding her tighter. Zoe looked up at me, her eyes glistening slightly. I'm so sorry, Mom, she said quietly. Seeing the wisdom and resilience in her face in that moment grounded me. I knew then I would do whatever necessary to protect my daughter and our future. Rick's selfishness would not break us. I pulled Zoe into my arms as we comforted each other late into the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight we still had each other. The next morning, I slowly opened my eyes, momentarily forgetting the anguish from Rick's late-night call. Zoe was still sleeping peacefully beside me, as pale dawn light filtered into my childhood bedroom. As the fog of sleep lifted, the harsh reality set back in. Rick was having a baby with another woman. I sighed heavily and pulled myself out of bed, careful not to disturb Zoe. Over a strong cup of coffee, I began making plans. I would need to find an apartment for Zoe and I immediately. I refused to uproot Zoe from her school and friends. Rick would just have to move out of our family home instead. I also emailed my divorce lawyer requesting an emergency meeting. I needed to formally document Rick's latest betrayal in case he tried denying it later. As I was typing, I heard light footsteps behind me. Morning, Mom, Zoe mumbled, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Morning, sweetie, I replied, attempting a smile. Zoe studied my face. So it wasn't just a bad dream then? She asked quietly. I sighed, gesturing for Zoe to come sit with me at the table. I grasped her hand tightly. No, honey, it wasn't a dream, but we're going to get through this. Zoe nodded, determination in her young eyes. Can I help with the apartment search today? I squeezed her hand, my heart swelling with love and pride. Of course you can. We're in this together. Over the next week, Zoe and I explored rental options between her school days and activities. With her input, we selected a small but cozy apartment less than a mile from her school. Zoe loved its corner unit location and spacious bedrooms. I also had an illuminating meeting with my lawyer, Julia. She informed me that if I filed my paperwork strategically, I could potentially claim financial damages from Rick due to his adultery and imminent new child. This is brutal, but it's necessary you protect yourself here, Julia advised bluntly. Document every interaction with Rick moving forward. I left Julia's office with renewed focus. I refused to let Rick destroy the stable home Zoe and I had built. If it took legal action to guarantee our financial future, so be it. I would do anything for my daughter, even leverage Rick's cruelest betrayal against him. Over the next few weeks, Zoe and I slowly settled into our new apartment routine. Underneath our determined exteriors, though, grief lingered. Sometimes after Zoe went to bed, I let the tears fall, mourning all Rick had callously broken. But Zoe needed me to be strong. So each morning, I picked myself up and continued building our new life, brick by difficult brick. And slowly, the pain began to recede. Today, we were going to pick up the last small boxes from the old house while Rick was at work. I steeled my nerves as we pulled into that once familiar driveway, focusing solely on quickly grabbing our things. This was just a pit stop before Zoe and I continued speeding towards our new beginning, fueled by resilience and just a hint of revenge. A few days later, I sat staring blankly at my laptop screen. My eyes kept drifting to the manila envelope sitting ominously on the corner of my desk. Inside were photos of Rick, seeming to depict a close relationship with his pretty young assistant. They were innocuous so far, shots of them having coffee together, walking and smiling after work events. But the implications were clear. My investigator friend Kara had taken the photos over the past month, tracking Rick's interactions with his assistant, Nina. She also provided detailed records of Rick's past credit issues and questionable business expenses. I leaned back with a heavy sigh, sadness washing over me. Our marriage meant so little to Rick that he began seeking out Nina before we were even divorced. My sadness quickly transformed into anger. Not at Nina. She seemed oblivious thus far to Rick's web of lies. No, my fury was directed solely at my selfish, philandering husband. If Rick wasn't willing to honor our marriage vows, then I no longer owed him discretion either. I suddenly realized I now had the means to strategically introduce turmoil into Rick's life. If I anonymously provided Nina documented proof of Rick's serial manipulation and lies, their budding relationship would certainly implode. And who knows what would happen if I tipped off his employer about Rick's shady financial dealings over the years. They likely wouldn't react well to fraud allegations. As an ethical, law-abiding woman, these vengeful ideas should have given me pause. But I was far beyond playing fair with Rick at this point. He had already demolished any integrity or good faith between us. After Rick's latest betrayal, I was determined to protect myself and Zoe at any cost. If that meant leveraging Rick's misdeeds against him, then so be it. Over the next few days, I discreetly compiled documentation of Rick's most questionable financial decisions and emails clearly showing his overly close work friendship with Nina. I typed up an anonymous letter to accompany the evidence packet, highlighting Rick's deceitful nature in business and marriage. This would clearly demonstrate to Nina that her charming, attentive boss was manipulating yet another unsuspecting woman. I knew the revelation would shock and deeply hurt Nina once she connected all the lies. But she deserved to know the truth about Rick before their relationship went any further. I was doing her a favor in the long run. At least that's what I told myself as I printed the letter and packaged everything for mailing. This was mere retribution, I reasoned, for the emotional agony Rick forced Zoe and I to endure. The day I dropped that fateful package in the mail, I drove home with hands shaking slightly. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, almost expecting Rick to be following me, having somehow uncovered my vengeful plot already. But as the days passed with no reaction from Rick, I relaxed slightly. Clearly Nina hadn't directly accused Rick yet, though undoubtedly the seed of suspicion was planted. Soon, I mailed a similar anonymous package to the ethics division at Rick's company. Those records documented inconsistent expense reports, questionable payments, and opaque financial transfers over the years. If Rick thought I would fade quietly into the background, allowing his lies and manipulation to continue unchecked, he was sorely mistaken. The revenge campaign was just getting started. Over the next few weeks, I scrutinized Rick from afar, looking for any cracks in his polished veneer. But outwardly, his life seemed utterly unaffected. He still met Nina for semi-regular coffee dates, and apparently no ethics investigation had been formally launched at his company yet. I tapped my foot impatiently, eager for my revenge plot to take effect. Then late one night, as I was catching up on work emails, an unknown number flashed across my phone screen. I hesitated, then tapped answer. "Hello?" I said cautiously. Hi, is this Lena?" a female voice asked timidly. "Yes, may I ask who's calling?" The woman cleared her throat nervously. "This is Nina, Rick's friend. Your name and photo were in a rather unsettling package I received recently," she said carefully. I sat up straighter. My anonymously sourced dossier must have raised alarms after all. "I see. How can I help you, Nina?" I asked politely, keeping any trace of satisfaction from my voice. Well, the package contained quite concerning records and emails indicating Rick hasn't been honest about a few things. I was hoping you could clarify some of this information since you know Rick more intimately, Nina said delicately. Gotcha, Rick. I smiled to myself. Outwardly, though, I kept my tone serious. I'm afraid you'd have to ask Rick directly about his personal business dealings. I signed confidentiality agreements around our divorce preventing me from discussing such matters, I lied smoothly. Nina sighed. Yes, but according to these records, Rick has a history of manipulative behavior in both his career and marriage. This led me to question if he's been honest with me as well. Her voice broke slightly. I stayed silent, letting Nina connect the dots herself about Rick's deceitful nature. My lack of argument would speak volumes. After a weighty pause, Nina continued softly. I guess what I'm really asking is, do you think Rick started our relationship before he ended things officially with you? Bingo. I had her exactly where I wanted her. Nina was now suspicious enough about Rick's character to directly question his integrity. I cleared my throat delicately. Again, Nina, you'd have to take that up with Rick. Now if there's nothing else. I trailed off pointedly. No, I'm sorry to have bothered you, Lena. Nina sighed defeatedly. I appreciate you speaking with me regardless. Take care, she added politely before hanging up. I set down my phone with a satisfied smile. Even if I didn't outright confirm Rick's misdeeds, my responses undoubtedly compounded Nina's doubts. Let her rip Rick's deceitful web apart herself. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Nina looked more strained and distant around Rick at public work events I happened to observe. Soon after, Rick showed up on my doorstep unannounced one evening, rage simmering beneath his controlled exterior. My revenge plot was working perfectly. Now to let Rick sabotage himself, while I watched karma unfold with pleasure. I peered through the door's peephole before slowly opening it. Evening, Rick, I said coolly, blocking his access. To what do I owe this surprise visit? Rick's jaw clenched, his genial mask slipping. I think you know exactly why I'm here, he bit out. Over the last few weeks, both my job and relationship have gone to hell, and I'm willing to bet anything you're involved. I raised my eyebrows, feigning confusion. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Rick, but I can assure you, I have nothing to do with your personal affairs these days, I replied breezily. Cut the crap, Lena, Rick snarled. Misleading documents just happened to anonymously land on my girlfriend and employer's desks, destroying credibility. What a coincidence, given our current divorce proceedings. I glared back unfazed by his temper. I suggest you watch your tone. Unless you have tangible proof of these allegations? I asked coolly. Rick huffed frustratedly. You may have covered your tracks, but I know your moralistic little fingerprints are all over this. You've always been petty and self-righteous. My, Rick, getting desperate now, are we? I scoffed. Grasping at straws to pin unrelated events on your nearly ex-wife? I have better things to do than obsess over your melodramas. We built a 20-year life together, Lena. And you're just fine watching it burn? Rick asked bitterly. You burned our marriage to the ground yourself last year, Rick, I said sharply. I've simply been trying to build something new from the wreckage. Any cracks emerging now are consequences of your own deceptions. Rick opened and closed his mouth indignantly, at a loss for how to redirect blame solely back on me. I sighed, leaning warily against the doorframe. Now, unless you have anything pertinent to discuss about our daughter, I believe this conversation has run its course, I said with finality. Rick glared balefully at me for a few moments before spinning sharply and stomping back to his car without another word. I watched his taillights fade into the night with vindictive satisfaction. Let him marinate in self-inflicted paranoia over failing work and relationship prospects. Meanwhile, Zoe was thriving. She made honor roll again this quarter and started a humble jewelry business she managed mostly online. Who was that mom? She asked when I returned inside. No one important, sweetie, I assured, kissing the top of her head where she sat doing homework. Zoe glanced up at me curiously, but didn't press the issue. She learned long ago involving herself too deeply in adult affairs only led to hurt. I squeezed Zoe's shoulder affectionately before heading to my bedroom, a slight smile playing over my lips. My revenge plot was succeeding perfectly. Soon, Rick would crash and burn. In the meantime, Zoe and I would continue building our peaceful life, heads held high. The contrast grew starker by the day between her steady resilience and Rick's floundering lies. Karma had arrived right on schedule. Over the next few months, I watched with growing satisfaction as Rick's life unraveled spectacularly. Soon after his enraged visit, Rick's employer formally launched an ethics investigation focused on several key executives, including Rick. The day I glimpsed Rick storming red-faced from the CEO's office, I knew heads would start rolling. Sure enough, a week later, Rick found himself unemployed after over 15 years with the company. Turns out, corporations don't appreciate mid-level managers misrepresenting financial records for personal gain. The day Rick boxed up his office, I drove by long enough to watch security escort him briskly from the building. His cropped hair couldn't quite hide his burning ears as whispers from former colleagues followed his perp walk of shame to the parking lot. At home, Rick's situation deteriorated further once Nina discovered she wasn't the only other woman occupying his time and empty promises. Even I was surprised when Kara uncovered Rick had been stringing along yet another young administrative assistant for months. Nina soon gathered the remnants of her dignity and cut Rick completely out of her life. She had plenty of sordid evidence regarding Rick's serial manipulation and lies to inoculate her against his sweet talk. I almost felt sorry watching Rick pathetically chase after her for weeks, his desperation growing more palpable each day. Almost, but not quite. They both fully deserved the misery this unraveling caused. In the meantime, Zoe flourished in her new school and part-time job. Though still soft-spoken, her inner strength and savvy shone through more each day. She had handled recent challenges with a grace far exceeding her 14 years. I made sure to frequently verbalize how proud I was at Zoe's resilience. My college savings is growing, Mom, but I keep adding to savings too for our family trip to Japan next summer, she told me cheerfully one evening. My heart swelled listening to Zoe eagerly outline travel plans she researched herself. Rick's absence barely even registers for her anymore. In his place stood a mature, thoughtful young woman wise beyond her years. Rick clearly recognized Zoe's glowing development as well. One day I exited the courthouse after yet another tedious divorce hearing to find Rick loitering outside. His belongings now occupied the extended stay motel visible over his shoulder across the street. Seeing me, Rick shuffled over pathetically. "Lena, wait," he pleaded, reeking of stale cigarettes and regret. "I just want to talk about Zoe. Isn't there any way for us to be a family again?" I looked at him levelly. "You decided our family wasn't a priority last year, Rick. We're moving forward on our own path now. Goodbye." I briskly turned towards my car without a backward glance. Rick didn't try stopping me this time. We both knew the chasm now gaping between my bright new future and his crumbled kingdom was permanent and irreparable. Settling into my driver's seat, I glimpsed Rick's shattered silhouette staring after me through the rearview mirror until I turned the corner. Then his forlorn shadow disappeared from view as I drove steadily onward towards home. Over the next few months, Rick grew increasingly desperate, his life now in shambles. He drove by Zoe's school, hoping to see her. He loitered outside my office, begging for loans to pay overdue bills. He even showed up at my parents' house once pathetically drunk, raving about reconciliation. I remained resolutely indifferent to these antics, refusing to rescue Rick from the bed he made. Inside, though, I'll admit his raging meltdowns secretly thrilled me. His downward spiral was the ultimate vengeance for years of callous manipulation. But desperate people make stupid decisions. And one day, Rick showed up on my doorstep waving legal documents, eyes bloodshot and jumping with paranoia. "You won't get away with trying to ruin me, Lena. I'm suing you for defamation regarding the ethics investigation that cost me my career." Rick spat viciously. I simply stared back impassively. "You sure you want to pursue this, Rick?" I asked softly. "Because discovery will delve into both our backgrounds quite extensively. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" Rick laughed harshly at my veiled warning about his own shady history. "Nice try, Lena, but I know the law. My lawyer says this is a solid case," he sneered. "Get ready for a legal battle." Sure enough, a courier soon arrived with Rick's official lawsuit, accusing me of providing his employer falsified records to influence their investigation. But I wasn't worried. I had documented all my strategic revenge plans and alibis meticulously in my password-protected journal at home. "Bring it on, Rick. Let's publicly drag every skeleton from our marriage out of the closet once and for all." At my lawyer's advice, I countersued for Rick's unpaid child support from the last few months. "This ensures we can fully investigate his employment situation and shady finances," Julia explained confidently. Rick strategically quit his job but likely has hidden income he's living on, so discovery should uncover tax evasion too. And uncover it did. Over months of exhaustive investigation, records exposed the full depth of Rick's long-running duplicity. Undeclared bank accounts emerged showing he embezzled money from previous jobs. Past Venmo exchanges indicated he was selling black-market knockoff designer accessories. Even Zoe's college fund showed suspicious withdrawals that Rick couldn't explain. The awful truth, unraveling, crushed me again temporarily. I cried many bitter tears over how profoundly our entire marriage had been a lie. Rick proved himself a pathological liar with zero remorse for the destruction caused. I didn't even fully recognize this monster anymore. But Zoe helped bolster my resolve once more. Don't worry about me or Dad anymore, Mom. I'm focusing all my energy on my future goals, not his issues, she said firmly, hugging me close late one difficult night. Her words reminded me how far we had come thanks to removing Rick's toxicity from our lives for good. Sure enough, the lengthy court case left Rick utterly exposed and defeated. The judge ordered him to repay the missing money for Zoe's college fund with interest and provide 6 months of overdue child support immediately to avoid jail time. His reputation lay in tatters. Meanwhile, Zoe thrived through it all. We're the only family I need, she whispered supportively as we embraced, finally free from Rick's shattered remains. I had shielded my daughter from her father's destructive web. Now we could build our lives on truth, rather than lies moving forward. Over the next year, Zoe and I carefully rebuilt our lives brick by difficult brick. After the court ruled fully in my favor, I invested a portion of the substantial settlement money in long-term savings bonds for Zoe's education. I used the rest to purchase a cozy bungalow near Zoe's high school. I was also ready for a professional reboot after the emotional roller coaster with Rick. I accepted an executive role with a thriving tech startup I admired. The work was engaging, my colleagues talented, and for the first time in ages, I looked forward to each new week. Zoe continued excelling in school while also working part-time at a jewelry boutique. She expanded the customized accessory line she designed herself last year into a legitimate home business. I displayed Zoe's unique beaded bracelets and necklaces proudly whenever we hosted game nights or study groups at our house. Seeing Zoe blossom creatively, now that she was finally free from the shadows of Rick's emotional manipulation, filled me with profound joy and gratitude. My shy yet wise daughter was spreading her wings at last. Bit by bit, we healed further and found brighter paths forward. Of course, no amount of legal justice or financial security could fully erase the betrayal trauma Rick burdened us with. Occasionally, I awoke breathless from nightmares where I had to take the witness stand again, publicly reliving each excruciating detail. And some days the weight of single parenting threatened to crush my spirit, no matter how independent Zoe grew. But during those times of doubt, I remembered the promise I made Zoe, that we would build the life we wanted, without limitations from Rick's toxicity, just us two against the world. On especially depressing days, Zoe would make us sugar cookie hot chocolate, and together we'd watch Gilmore Girls reruns, reminiscing about better times ahead. In those quiet moments, hope returned once more. One Saturday afternoon, nearly a year after the court settlement, Zoe and I pulled up to my parents' house for our usual family dinner. We came bearing 2 trays of Zoe's latest confection experiment, salted honey tarts. As we relaxed in the familiar comfort of my childhood kitchen later, catching up over steaming mugs of tea, I felt all the broken fragments inside me shift seamlessly into place at last. Here, surrounded by the people I loved most, reflecting on the insane journey that delivered us safely here, I made peace with even the most painful parts of my past, because every jagged crack, every scar left by Rick's cold betrayal, brought me and Zoe infinitely closer. Our alliance, glowing brightly before me, now was unbreakable. No matter what else crumbled in this world, Zoe and I would stand tall, side by side.